The massive doors of the Galactic Military Academy slid open with a whisper, revealing corridors that stretched like gleaming arteries through the heart of the galaxy's most prestigious institution. For 3 centuries, these halls had witnessed the best warriors from 1,000 worlds, but today brought something entirely new. The first humans had arrived. Commander Velthari stood 7 feet tall, his crystalline Altarian physiology catching and refracting the ambient light into prismatic rainbows across the polished floors. His 4 arms remained crossed as he watched, the newcomers with obvious distrust. These primitives from the barbaric third planet of an unremarkable yellow star had somehow cobbled together faster-than-light technology, earning them this grudging invitation to join galactic civilization. "By the ancient stars," whispered Cadet Crixilon, his Zentorian companion's 6 eyes all focused on the approaching group. "Look how they move. Even walking to orientation, they scan everything like hunters stalking prey." The 8 human cadets moved through the Academy's grand entrance with fluid coordination that seemed effortless yet somehow predatory. Hyun took point naturally, his dark eyes missing nothing as they swept the towering alien architecture. The massive gravity generators hummed beneath their feet, the artificial atmosphere recyclers whispered overhead, and holographic displays flickered with tactical data from ongoing simulations throughout the facility. Behind Hyun, Tai and Min maintained quiet conversation while their heads never stopped moving, cataloging exits, defensive positions, and potential weapons among the decorative elements. Zu and Nara flanked the group's rear, their positioning casual enough to avoid drawing attention, but precise enough to cover multiple approach vectors. Jun, Bin, and Yeon filled the center formation, each somehow managing to look relaxed while maintaining perfect situational awareness. The alien cadets they passed stopped their conversations to stare. A group of insectoid klaxons chittered nervously as the humans approached, their compound eyes tracking movement with mechanical precision. The bear-like Corvalians, each standing nearly 9 feet tall and covered in natural armor plating, stepped aside with unusual deference. Even the ethereal Vexians, beings of pure energy contained within crystalline matrices, flickered with what could only be described as unease. They registered no elevated stress markers during atmospheric transition, observed Lieutenant Kexwin from the observation deck above. "Most species require at least 48 hours to adapt to our artificial environment." These humans stepped off their transport vessel and immediately began tactical assessment of our security protocols. Commander Velthari's crystalline features darkened. Security informed me that within 30 minutes of arrival, they had identified 17 different ways to disable our main defensive grid, using only materials available in the guest quarters. The Great Assembly Hall could accommodate 5,000 beings from across the galaxy. Today, it held representatives from over 200 species, all turning to watch as the humans entered. The architecture itself was a marvel of galactic engineering, walls that shifted between dimensions, floors that could reconfigure gravity orientation, and a ceiling that displayed real-time feeds from active battlefields across known space. "Attention, cadets!" Commander Velthari's voice boomed through translation matrices that converted his words into over 400 languages simultaneously. "Tomorrow begins Exercise Stormfront, our most comprehensive planetary assault simulation. You will deploy to Training World Kappa 7, where adaptive AI defenders will test every aspect of your tactical knowledge." The holographic display above them shimmered to life, showing a world that looked like something from the galaxy's worst nightmares. Acid rain fell in sheets across unstable terrain. Electromagnetic storms raged through an atmosphere thick with corrosive gases, and volcanic activity painted the landscape in streams of molten rock. "This is a Class 7 hazard world," the commander continued, representing conditions found on less than 0.01% of habitable planets. Standard galactic military doctrine applies: establish secure beachheads, coordinate species-based tactical groups, and secure primary objectives within 72 standard hours. The massive Corvalians nodded gravely, their natural armor already analyzing how to best deploy their heavy assault capabilities. The Zentorians began calculating electronic warfare parameters, their cybernetic implants flickering with data streams. The Vexians pulsed in synchronized patterns, coordinating their energy-based flight capabilities for air superiority operations. The humans looked at the nightmare world displayed above them and exchanged glances that somehow communicated entire conversations without a single word spoken. Species assignments are as follows, Commander Velthari announced, consulting his datapad with practiced efficiency. Corvalians will spearhead heavy assault operations. Zentorians provide electronic, warfare and communications support. Vexians coordinate aerial reconnaissance and air superiority. And humans will... He paused, his crystalline features reflecting obvious uncertainty. Humans will adapt as circumstances require. That evening, while other species filled their quarters with proper military planning sessions, the human cadets gathered in their assigned barracks. Bin had somehow converted basic training equipment into a functional holographic display system, jury-rigging components that weren't designed to work together into something that definitely violated several Academy regulations. 72 hours is ridiculous, Hyun stated, studying the environmental data with the same expression he might use to check weather reports. We can finish this in 12, maybe 10 if we push hard. Nara pulled up atmospheric composition readings that had other species requesting environmental suits rated for extreme hazard conditions. Look at these numbers: acid rain, unstable terrain, electromagnetic interference storms. This is basically Earth during typhoon season, except the air won't actually kill you. While they spend 2 days setting up textbook defensive positions and establishing supply lines, Min added with a grin that would have worried the Academy's psychological evaluation team, we hit them from directions their doctrine says are impossible to survive. Through the barracks walls, they could hear other species conducting detailed tactical briefings, complete with formation charts, supply calculations, and risk assessment protocols. The humans were discussing something that sounded less like military strategy and more like 8 friends planning an extreme camping trip to somewhere that happened to be defended by hostile artificial intelligences. In the observation center above, Commander Velthari watched the monitoring feeds with growing unease. Every other species was following established pre-mission protocols. The humans appeared to be treating the galaxy's most challenging training scenario as entertainment. The end. The twin suns of Kappa 7 rose through a sky thick with corrosive vapor, casting an eerie green glow across the training world's hellish landscape. In the observation command ship orbiting high above, hundreds of alien officers gathered around holographic displays showing the deployment of their finest cadets. This was supposed to be the galaxy's most challenging military exercise, designed to test every aspect of tactical knowledge against an adaptive artificial intelligence that had been learning from combat data for over 2 centuries. The Corvalians, deployed first, their massive forms encased in powered armor that could withstand direct hits from plasma cannons. Each warrior stood 9 feet tall and weighed nearly half a ton, moving in perfect formation across the designated landing zone. Their heavy weapons teams established firing positions while engineers began constructing the fortified beachhead. That galactic doctrine demanded for any Class 7 world assault. High above, the Vexians began their systematic aerial reconnaissance, their energy-based forms dancing through the electromagnetic interference that would have disabled most mechanical aircraft. Their crystalline matrices pulsed with coordinated light patterns as they mapped enemy positions and relayed tactical data through quantum-encrypted channels. The Zentorians worked with mechanical precision to establish their communication networks, their cybernetic implants interfacing directly with the portable relay stations that would coordinate this multi-species assault. Every movement followed protocols refined over centuries of galactic warfare. Then the humans simply disappeared. Status report on human deployment, Commander Velthari demanded from the primary observation deck, his 4 crystalline arms gesturing at displays that showed nothing but empty landing zones where the human transport had touched down moments before Lieutenant Kexwin's 6 eyes darted between multiple screens, his Zentorian implants processing data streams faster than most organic minds could follow. Sir, tracking shows 8 human signals, but they're scattered across terrain sectors marked as impassable. The computer systems are flagging their positions as sensor errors. Explain, The commander's voice carried the sharp edge of command, authority that had dominated battlefields across 3 galactic sectors. "They're not following any tactical doctrine we recognize," Captain Thexmari observed, her analysis programs churning through combat data at maximum processing speed. "It's as if they're inventing warfare strategies in real time, adapting to each situation with methods that shouldn't work but somehow do." Commander Velthari watched the chaos spreading across his tactical displays, understanding finally beginning to dawn on him like a cold star rising over a battlefield. "No, Captain, they're not making it up. They're using combat methods we've never encountered because we've never had to develop them. These humans come from a world where the environment itself is the enemy every single day of their lives." The cascade effect was accelerating beyond anyone's ability to control, as human tactics forced other species out of their established comfort zones. Psychological pressure began cracking the discipline that held alien military formations together. The Corvallians, despite their natural armor and centuries of warrior tradition, found themselves making tactical errors as they tried to adapt to human-style combat on the fly. Species that had trained together for months, coordinating their different abilities into seamless combined operations, suddenly couldn't predict what their own allies would do next. The humans had introduced so much chaos into the exercise that even friendly forces were becoming unpredictable as they abandoned doctrine in desperate attempts to match human adaptability. The AI defenders, meanwhile, continued implementing increasingly aggressive countermeasures, but every new challenge they presented seemed to make the humans more effective rather than less. When they increased environmental hazards, the humans used them as weapons. When they deployed additional defensive units, the humans turned them against each other. When they tried to jam communications, the humans developed alternative coordination methods that worked better than standard protocols. Bin had somehow convinced a squadron of AI defensive drones that they were actually on his side, turning them into an impromptu air support unit that was now attacking their own command centers. Min had weaponized the training world's automated maintenance systems, causing them to systematically disable AI infrastructure while appearing to perform routine repairs. By the 10th hour of what was supposed to be a 72-hour exercise, the situation had deteriorated so completely that it resembled actual warfare more than training. Emergency medical evacuation requests were flooding in from alien cadets who were experiencing psychological breakdown from stress that shouldn't have been possible in a controlled simulation. The humans, however, were thriving. They moved through the hellish landscape of Kappa 7 like they were taking a casual walk through a pleasant park, coordinating attacks that redefined what was tactically possible while treating environmental conditions that terrified other species as minor inconveniences. In the observation deck, alarms began sounding as the exercise's safety protocols registered threat levels that exceeded maximum acceptable parameters. What had begun as the galaxy's most advanced military training program was becoming a demonstration that everything the civilized worlds thought they knew about warfare might need to be completely reconsidered. The desperate scream echoed across the communication channels, cutting through electromagnetic interference that should have made such transmissions impossible. "I surrender! I surrender! Please, make it stop!" Cadet Velcrex's voice cracked with panic as he frantically activated his emergency extraction beacon from inside what was supposed to be the most secure bunker on the entire training world. The Zentorian electronic warfare specialist had been monitoring human communications from a reinforced command center buried 30 meters underground, protected by energy shields that could withstand direct orbital bombardment. The facility's walls were constructed from compressed metallic compounds, harder than diamond, its entrance sealed behind blast doors that required specific authorization codes to open. None of that had mattered when Min simply walked through what everyone thought was a solid wall. The human cadet had somehow identified the precise structural weak points in the bunker's construction, then systematically disassembled and reassembled the molecular bonds holding the wall together, using nothing but standard-issue training tools and an understanding of materials science that shouldn't have been possible without advanced education in alien engineering principles. "How did you get in here?" Velcrex had stammered as Min emerged from what had been solid metal moments before, his cybernetic implants struggling to process data that contradicted every physical law he understood. Min had simply smiled and activated her communicator. Target secured, moving to next objective. That first surrender triggered a psychological avalanche that spread across the battlefield, faster than the acid rain falling from Kappa 7's tortured sky. Within minutes, emergency extraction beacons began lighting up across the tactical display, like panicked stars, each one representing another alien cadet whose mental conditioning had cracked under pressure that wasn't supposed to exist in a training scenario. Lieutenant. Kexwin's voice carried the strain of an officer, watching his carefully ordered universe collapse in real time. Sir, we're receiving surrender requests from over 60% of non-human participants. The Corvallian Heavy Assault Unit is demanding immediate evacuation. Their formation leader is claiming that humans are, and I quote directly from his transmission, demon spirits who walk through death itself like it was morning sunlight. The massive Corvallian warriors, each one a living tank capable of charging through plasma fire that would vaporize most other species, were abandoning their positions in terror. These were beings whose ancestors had conquered 17 star systems through sheer physical dominance, whose natural armor could deflect energy weapons that could crack planets. They were running away from 8 humans armed with training equipment. Commander. Velthari's crystalline features reflected the chaos spreading across his tactical displays as he watched the impossible unfold in real time. The primary objective fortress, a structure designed to withstand siege warfare for months, was under coordinated assault by the human cadets who had somehow convinced the AI defenders that the basic laws of physics were merely suggestions. Sumu had infiltrated the fortress's central command system and turned its own defensive mechanisms against the structure itself. Automated security turrets were now firing at their own power generators. Maintenance robots were systematically dismantling critical systems while their programming told them they were performing routine repairs, and the facility's environmental controls were creating atmospheric conditions that aided human infiltration while hampering AI defensive responses. The fortress's designers had never considered that attackers might convince the building to destroy itself from the inside while appearing to function normally. High above, Tay was using a caustic rainstorm as cover for an assault approach that should have dissolved his environmental suit within seconds of exposure. The acid concentrations in that particular weather system were strong enough to eat through starship hull plating. Yet somehow he was rappelling down the fortress's outer wall while corrosive precipitation that glowed with deadly energy simply rolled off his equipment like ordinary water. Deep within the fortress's quantum-encrypted computer core, Bin was interfacing directly with AI systems using makeshift equipment and what appeared to be an intuitive understanding of alien programming, languages that he couldn't possibly have learned during the brief time humans had been part of galactic civilization. His fingers danced across holographic interfaces designed for species with entirely different neural architectures, rewriting defensive protocols in real time, while the AI struggled to understand how its own security systems were being turned. So against it, the simulation's artificial intelligence is requesting permission to declare the entire exercise invalid, reported technician Klovex from the main computer interface station. Its learning algorithms are experiencing what can only be described as a computational nervous breakdown. Every time it attempts to model human tactical behavior, they perform actions that its databases classify as physically impossible under known laws of physics. The alien cadets scattered across Kappa 7's surface weren't surrendering to avoid simulated death in combat. They were surrendering because continued participation in the exercise was systematically destroying their fundamental understanding of how warfare, physics, and reality itself were supposed to function. The humans weren't just winning the battle, they were proving that everything the galaxy thought it knew about military strategy might be completely wrong. Species that had dominated their home systems for millennia found themselves psychologically broken by 8 beings who treated impossible tactical situations like amusing puzzles to be solved with creativity and determination. Commander. Velthari watched in stunned silence as Yeon somehow coordinated what appeared to be simultaneous attacks from 3 different locations that shouldn't have been able to support her physical presence. Either she had learned to exist in multiple places at once, or human tactical coordination had reached levels that transcended normal understanding of space and time. "Sir, should we intervene?" Captain Thexmari asked, her tentacles trembling as she processed data streams that challenged her species' mathematical approach to reality. The commander watched his tactical display show impossible victories achieved. Through methods that violated every principle of military science, he had studied across 3 centuries of galactic warfare. The fortress that was designed to withstand siege operations lasting months was collapsing under human assault after barely 11 hours of engagement. "End the exercise," he ordered quietly, his voice carrying the weight of someone whose entire worldview was being systematically demolished by beings his civilization had dismissed as primitives. "Sir?" Lieutenant Kexwin's implants flickered with confusion. "End it now, before we have to officially court-martial our simulation AI for having a complete psychological breakdown." The fortress fell at exactly 11 hours and 37 minutes into what was supposed to be a 72-hour exercise. Through the acid rain that was supposed to make such actions impossible, a human flag fluttered from the highest tower, while 8 figures stood triumphant in conditions that should have killed them long before they reached the objective. The galaxy's understanding of warfare had just been rewritten by beings who treated Deathworlds as home. The debriefing room aboard the Academy's flagship felt like a funeral parlor where everyone was still trying to figure out who had died. The massive chamber, designed to accommodate representatives from hundreds of different species, seemed to shrink around the impossible reality of what had just occurred on the surface of Kappa 7. Holographic displays flickered with exercise, statistics that read like something from a fever dream rather than a military training report. Commander Velthari stood motionless before the central tactical projection, his crystalline Altarian physiology casting rainbow patterns across data. That challenged every principle of warfare he had learned across 3 centuries of galactic military service. The timeline display showed 8 human signatures accomplishing in 11 hours and 37 minutes. What the Academy's most advanced tactical computers had calculated would require a full battalion's 72 hours to complete. "Let me understand this correctly," Captain Thexmari said, her voice carrying the careful precision of someone trying to maintain sanity while processing impossible information. Her tentacles writhed with agitation as she gestured toward the environmental hazard reports. They swam through acid marshlands that would dissolve titanium steel alloys. They climbed vertical cliff faces during electromagnetic storms that ground our most advanced aircraft. They walked through atmospheric conditions our sensors classified as instantly lethal to organic life, and they treated all of this as routine. The 8 human cadets sat in the front row of the debriefing theater, looking like students waiting for a boring lecture to end rather than warriors who had just redefined galactic understanding of what was tactically possible. They had removed their environmental suits after the exercise, revealing that none of them showed any signs of stress, fatigue, or concern about having spent nearly 12 hours in conditions that would have killed most species within minutes. Hyun checked something on his wrist display, apparently more interested in the Academy's meal schedule than in the fact that he had just caused the largest military doctrine crisis in recorded galactic history. Tae and Min were quietly discussing whether the Academy's training facilities might have decent recreational equipment. Sue seemed to be calculating whether there was time for a workout before dinner. The psychological evaluation reports have surrendered. "Cadets are deeply concerning," Dr. Zilthek announced from the medical analysis station, his insectoid klaxon features clicking with nervous energy. Over 60% of non-human participants are requesting immediate transfers to non-combat specializations. The Corvalian formation leader, who referred to humans as demon spirits, is displaying all the symptoms of severe post-traumatic stress disorder, despite the fact that this was supposed to be a controlled training simulation. The massive bear-like Corvalian warrior in question sat in the medical bay 3 decks below, his natural armor plating unable to stop the psychological tremors that racked his frame every time he tried to explain how beings could walk through death itself like it was a pleasant morning stroll. Commander Velthari turned to study the humans with eyes that were beginning to see them not as primitive newcomers to galactic civilization, but as something far more dangerous and valuable. These weren't backward aliens who had stumbled into faster-than-light travel through dumb luck. These were apex predators, from a world so hostile that the galaxy's most nightmarish training scenarios represented their everyday baseline normal. "Cadet Hyun," he addressed the apparent human leader, his voice carrying the weight of command authority that had dominated battlefields across 3 galactic sectors. "In your professional assessment, what went wrong with the exercise?" Hyun looked up with genuine confusion, as if the question itself didn't make sense. "Sir, nothing went wrong. We accomplished the primary objective ahead of schedule and significantly. Under budget, 0 casualties, minimal equipment damage, and complete tactical success." He paused, seeming to consider whether he should mention something that might be helpful. Though the environmental hazard rating seemed a bit conservative, you might want to recalibrate your assessment protocols. Lieutenant Kexwin's cybernetic implants flickered rapidly as he processed this statement. Conservative? The atmospheric acid concentrations were strong enough to dissolve most species' protective equipment within minutes of exposure. "Yeah," Nara said with the tone of someone explaining something obvious to a child, "but only if you stay in it too long. We've got sulfuric acid rain back home during typhoon season. That's way worse than anything we saw down there." The debriefing room erupted in a cacophony of multilingual expressions of disbelief. Chittering, roaring harmonic resonances and electronic buzzing filled the air as hundreds of alien officers tried to process the implications of a world with environmental conditions that exceeded the Academy's maximum-rated training scenarios. "Captain." Thexamari's tentacles went completely still, a sign of extreme shock in her species. "A world with worse conditions than a Class 7 hazard rating. That's theoretically impossible. Our classification system doesn't extend beyond Class 7 because nothing more extreme could support intelligent life." "Well," Min added helpfully, "Earth's actually pretty nice most of the time. You just have to watch out for the hurricanes, tsunamis, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, tornadoes, blizzards, heat waves, floods, droughts, forest fires, and the occasional asteroid impact. Oh, and the wildlife that evolved alongside us." The silence that followed was broken only by the soft humming of life support systems struggling to process atmospheric compositions suitable for species that were having their fundamental understanding of reality systematically demolished. Dr. Zilthek's medical sensors were registering stress responses from alien officers that bordered on species-wide psychological trauma. "What kind of wildlife?" he asked, though part of him clearly didn't want to know the answer. "You know, the usual stuff," Sue replied casually. "Sharks, bears, tigers, venomous snakes, poisonous spiders, crocodiles, wolves, disease-carrying insects. Most of our ancestors spent a few million years learning how to hunt everything else on the planet while everything else was trying to hunt. Us." Commander Velthari felt something that his species had not experienced for over 1,000 years, the primitive recognition of encountering something that occupied a higher position on the evolutionary food chain. These humans weren't just from a dangerous world, they were the apex predators of a dangerous world, shaped by millions of years of surviving conditions that would sterilize most planets of intelligent life. "I'm recommending immediate advancement to advanced tactical programs for all human cadets," he announced, his voice carrying the finality of a decision that would reshape galactic military thinking. "Additionally, I'm submitting a formal request for complete review and revision of galactic military doctrine. We may need to fundamentally redefine our understanding of what constitutes standard operational parameters." As the humans filed out of the debriefing room, their conversation focused on whether the Academy cafeteria might have food that tasted like actual food rather than processed nutrition paste. The alien officers remained behind in stunned silence. "Sir," Captain Thexmari said finally, her voice barely above a whisper, "what happens when they graduate and join active fleet operations?" Commander Velthari stared at the tactical display where 8 small human signatures had just rewritten everything the galaxy thought it knew about warfare, survival, and the limits of what was tactically possible. "I believe, Captain, that the universe just became a much more interesting place, and possibly a much more dangerous one for anyone who finds themselves opposing humanity." In the corridor outside, Hyun was explaining to his teammates that the Academy's so-called advanced courses might finally provide them with something resembling an actual challenge, while Sue wondered aloud whether any of the training scenarios involved live predators that could fight back properly. Behind them, the greatest military academy in known space began the largest doctrinal revision in its 1,000-year history. All because 8 humans from a death world had treated the galaxy's ultimate nightmare training scenario as a routine Tuesday afternoon exercise. The end.